everyone, it's Lisa and Luna from Don't Run with Scissors, back with another Technique Tuesday. Today I'm going to endeavor into the world of colored pencils. I was very excited to get a really beautiful set for Christmas from my fiance, and I'm starting to play and expand my knowledge about them. So today I'm going to show you how to make this card. In the end, I'm going to go through a little bit about colored pencils, what they are, and what types of inks you can use to use them and color. And you can see how I made this world, and it's blended. If you have a close-up on it, you can see that there's some high greens and browns into the land of our globe, and also the blues. So let's get started. There are two types of colored pencils, and they are watercolor and wax. Quality definitely matters here, there's no question about it, as I have endeavored into this world. My very first sets here were from Hobby Lobby. You can see here 24 colored pencils for $2.99. They were wax. Wax colored pencils will resist water. They start out opaque, which allows you to keep building up on the color when you are shadowing or just coloring anything. And you can use solvents to break these down and blend them, which is actually what we're going to do today. So we're not going to spend too much time on blending at this point, but that's what's going to happen. Watercolor pencils, on the other hand, are wax or oil-based, but they include an emulsifier like soap, which allows them to be water-soluble. So watercolor pencils you can almost treat like watercolor paints. And you can break those down with a water pen or a Dove blender pen, all sorts of fun stuff. But that's next week's video, so we're not going to spend too much time on watercolor pencils because we're going to come back to that. So here are my new sets. These are Spectrum Noir colored pencils, and they come in 5 sets, 24 colors, and they're broken out by color type or family type, however Spectrum Noir likes to do that. And they've got nature, marine, they've got primaries, essentials, and florals. And when you open them, oh, it's just beautiful. I love colored pencils. They come together. They come in sets of 3. These are what they blend well with. So when you're working with them, you should kind of lean towards using the 3 colors that are kind of grouped together. Of course, you don't have to stick to that, but it is their suggestion on how these work. Spectrum Noir also sells with this a pencil sharpener, a blending liquid, and a stump set, which is, we'll get to that in a minute. So Spectrum Noir came out with some colored pencils. There's also the Prismacolor colored pencils, which are the probably highest quality that are out on the market. And if you're really into it, those are a great find, but almost double the price of these. And this is the tax you'd pay. So, moving on. The biggest trick to using colored pencils and your stamps is really paper quality. It took me a long time to figure that out. I was getting very disappointed and angry with how things were working until I finally settled and said, what's wrong? And I went and I found out that my paper quality was not good. Excuse me. I was using regular old cardstock that I got from Michael's or Hobby Lobby or Joann's, and you see this number down here at 65 pounds. The paper just wasn't nice enough for the colors to blend. You need to get a higher pound quality. Spectrum Noir does have their cardstock. It's 100 pounds, but a lot of people out there in the blogosphere like to use either a Neenah cardstock, Georgia Pacific cardstock. That's 110 pounds, and that's what this sheet of paper is here. So when we start working, I'll show you on that. This here is coming back here to the cardstock, 65 pounds, because I wanted to show you where I was getting very frustrated. So paper quality really does matter. If you are doing some nice cards or scrapbook layouts and you want to use your nice stamps, make sure you invest in 110-pound paper. It makes a world of difference, and we can get to that. In addition to paper, just to stay on the track here, for watercolors, you want to either get a cold press or a hot press watercolor paper. It all depends on the tooth of the paper and how much texture you really want in your image when you're coloring. Cold pressed, there's going to be a lot of texture. That's usually the easiest of your pads to find in the AC Moore's, Hobby Lobby, anything like that. Hot press paper, it's smoother. It's probably one of the best watercolors you can use. You can use vellum, but no glossy paper because it slides right off. The ink's the colored pencil just can't stick to it because there's no tooth or grip to the paper. However, if you're really bent on doing it on glossy paper, you can spray it with a fixative, which will allow the paper to get some texture, and then you can color on that. Never really done it. I figured just don't use glossy paper, it's way easier. And if you don't want your work to ever go away, you can coat it with a crystal clear acrylic coating. If my work really lasts 100 years, I'm sure it'll be way better in 100 years. So I don't need to save mine, so I don't have any of that Krylon acrylic spray to show you. Okay, so back to colored pencils. I have here my regular colored pencils from Hobby Lobby, and I'm just going to pick out a purple and a pink, and I'm going to do 2 swatches. This is on the what number? 65 pound paper, and this is on the 110. So let's put that there. 65 pound, 110 pound. Now you can sit here and you can blend, and you can do very nicely and just shade in, because these will blend on top of each other and they will do a very nice job, no question. And they'll even get better when you're using the better colored pencils. I just grabbed these cheap ones because they were very nice and close and accessible. Now, these type of pencils can be broken down by a solvent. By a solvent, we mean an odorless mineral spirit. Gamsol is probably the most popular. If you go around, we're in New England, it's pretty hard to find that unless you're in a specialty shop. So there's the Mona Lisa odorless mineral spirits, also called odorless paint thinner. So you can use that. Some people swear by using baby oil. Others swear by using Gooby Gone. So we're going to dip right in. These are paper stumps. They're just paper rolled up really, really tightly. These ones were made in Taiwan. I hear the ones that are made from Japan are better. They're not so flaky. And as I said before, Spectrum Noir does have a set, which could be helpful if you want to use and stick with that product. So I'm going to take my stump. You can see this one has a blue tip already. That's because I had been using it. You want to hold it down, and you can see the liquid start to creep up. That's when it's ready, and all you need to do is go in a circular motion. And the color will start to melt, as it were, and you can blend them into each other. Circular motions work great. You can watch the color break down, and you'd be very happy. Now, you'll see that it came through here. It will dry, and it will look much better. Now, that's on the 65 pound paper. I wasn't happy because I could see it streak. Even though the color had been breaking down, I wasn't happy with the just wasn't all the way done. So I went and I got myself 100 pound paper, 110 pound. And the colors just blend so much better. I was really quite shocked what a difference it made. Again, small circular motions with that. And you'll see, again, it does come through the paper a little bit, so it will dry. You want to make sure you work on a mat. Somehow I tipped this real quick. Just give it a swoop. Okay, so another thing that you can do is with blending. I'm going to stick to the nicer paper. And shading here. Is people say that you can use a blender pen. So this is with Gamsol. I have here a Copic blender marker, which also will work. There's going to be a catch to it. But it breaks the color down, and you're going to be able to shade. Again, that is coming through the paper. When it dries, it'll be just fine. There's the Dove Blender pen, which people also say you can use. I find it a little trickier to use than the others options. It's a Dove Blender pen. They have refillable tips. They come with little bottles when you buy them. But again, you can just go right in, little circular motions, and those colors will break down. And you can see that they did that, and I can stretch them out. If I had lines, I could make them go a little further. So that'll work as well. Le Plume also has a blender pen. If you have those, that would work as well. So, on regular paper, that's great. Now, if you want to start stamping, it's when it gets a little trickier. Now, I have on my website, or my blog, a copy of this sheet, which allows you to see what type of inks work better with what you're doing. Colored pencils, you really want to stick to a dye ink. These are 4 that I've stamped. Here's me playing. This was Memento ink. This was an archival ink, Brilliance ink. Hero Arts black ink, and the StazOn ink. You can see StazOn's a nice pronounced image. Again, on the 110-pound cardstock. With the card that I decided to make, I wanted to stay softer, so I did pick the Memento and did do the coloring in there. So you can do your inks. Now the trick is you want to make sure if you're playing with a solvent that you need to make sure the ink isn't going to blend and make a mess with that. That wasn't it. So you want to be careful of that. If you're going to use a Copic marker, this is where it's also important. The Hero Arts isn't necessarily made for Copic markers, and you can see how this petal here, it got a little blendy, it dulled, softened, bled a little. But the other side stayed okay. This is with the Gamsol. I went over onto this flower. This is with Memento ink and colored. I did the stump on this side and the Copic on this side, and you can see that none of the ink actually bled. So again, be careful with your ink choice depending on what blending solvent you're going to use. It will make a difference for that. Now, 2 quick things, and then we'll actually get to coloring. Colored pencils also help with stamping. I have this pine cone branch, and those of you that stamp a lot, getting a 2-toned image can be tricky. But now with colored pencils, you can just stamp the image. I didn't do that very well, but we'll stick with it. You can stamp the image, and you can go back in with a colored pencil and just highlight that in. And all of a sudden, now you have a 2-toned ink stamp for your card, and you don't have to go in and do anything crazy. It's really great with trees. It's really good with flowers, so that you can articulate stems or branches or whatever you're into. But that helps make a 2-tone stamp without an issue. Okay, so with my world that I made, I love the stamp. It is a Hero Arts stamp. I actually found it at Staples, ironically enough. And I decided that based on the last one I was going to do Memento ink. So we're going to stamp it with Memento ink. Now some of you looking at my card may say I don't know how to stamp or color in the lines. The stamp actually has a funny circular shape to it. So it makes it have this extra line. I didn't put it there. It wasn't a bad stamper, I promise. Okay, and now we're going to do, I'm just going to do the water just to show you how I did that. So I have my blue. I'm going to take my family of 3. Maybe a family of 4. Let's see here. And I'm going to start. Now, dark edges usually mean by stamp companies that you should make that a darker area. And it's the water, and we know that pollution and all that around the water does make it darker. Just going to go in, using the edge of my pencil. Go in. Watch out for Madagascar there. The other great thing, if you decide to color outside the lines, like whoops, These are erasable. So that's helpful. Then I'm going to come in with another blue. This one's a little more purple. I'm not going to go up towards Europe. I'm just going to stick in the middle here. And then I'm just going to keep adding some blues. Again, as these are opaque colors, they layer very nicely and they blend almost on their own. But sometimes you just have that residual pencil line that drives you crazy. Drives me crazy. Oh, some light blue in here. C in there. I don't want to be by the C. Okay. So now that those are all done, I'm going to take my blending stump. This is one I've been using. It's got a blue tip. Those of you that use these and you don't have 9,000 of them like others, all you have to do is when the set comes, it's sandpaper, and you just kind of scratch it off. You'll notice the color will disappear, and you're off and running. So I'm going to dump that in. And all you got to do, again, small circles, and the colors will blend beautifully. I can't say I stress the paper enough. It amazes me in person what a difference that really made. Sometimes you need to re-dip. All depends on what you're feeling. I think I colored Japan blue. But you can go back over it. And you can keep layering colors even after you use the solvent. This isn't an end-all be-all. You can go right back over it. I might let it dry a little because it does seep through the paper. So you might want to just keep track of that. These are the ones we did earlier. You can see that this one's still drying a little bit from the Gamsol. Odorless mineral spirits, they say you should use it in a well-ventilated area. It does give off some kind of vibe. I'm not sure what exactly it is or why it's unhealthy. But they say a ventilated area, so follow precautions and be safe. So that's how I did the water for this card here. And of course, I just got liquid all over it from my fingers, which will dry. And I colored it in. I put a little bow on it, made some little sprigs, and stamped "Love Makes All Things Possible." This is for an encouragement card for someone at work. They're having a tough time, so I wanted to make sure I gave them something to acknowledge that and maybe make them feel better. One last thing you can do, of course, the fun never ends with colored pencils. Your sky's the limit, but some of the techniques that are out there is using an embossing folder. Now, any of you have ever gone to a cemetery when you were a little kid and you had to do gravestone rubbings? This is essentially the same thing. So use the raised side of your sheet, throw your piece of paper in there, and grab a pencil here, and it's the same thing. So now your embossing folder can turn into a background. And who knows what more fun you could have with that. So, there you go. Indian rubbing on your embossing folders and using colored pencils with a solvent, Gamsol, anything along those lines. And there you have it. So again, the biggest thing to remember, two things. If you're going to be using your stamps, make sure you're picking an ink pad that will work with what you're doing. If you're going to be blending them with a liquid, make sure you pick the right ink. If you're just going to blend them by themselves, because let me tell you, these pencils do a great job all by themselves. They really don't need any help. But it is nice to blend and play. So again, pick the inks, get some good paper, and I will see you next time where we're going to start playing with watercolors. So have a great night. Thanks for tuning in. See you next week. Bye-bye.